Hello, and welcome to Alice. Today, we're going to be taking you through a lesson on how to start building a scene in the Alice virtual world. This will be a brief overview of the lesson. For more detailed instruction, you may want to download and follow along using the PowerPoint version of the lesson or the Comprehensive Facilitation Guide. If you need to download project files or additional resources, just go to the project page and you'll find everything you need there. An Alice world is a virtual environment created in 3 dimensions. The 3D world is a representation of a place and the objects in that place that have height, width, and depth. When you open Alice, you can see scenes such as the ones you're seeing here. Alice worlds have 3 dimensions and textures like the grass and the environments in them. Alice virtual environments or scenes will always contain sky and fog settings, a ground surface such as grass, sand, rocks, or water, a range of objects such as characters, props, or scenery, and a camera that can be moved around the scene. Let's also take a look at the Alice Scene Editor. Alice contains a selection of templates you can use to start your scene. They are grouped by blank slates and starter worlds. Blank slates are empty worlds with preset ground textures, sky colors, and fog settings to mimic different environments. Starter worlds are environments containing a range of prop objects pre-built to a specific theme. Let's open a scene now. When you first open a project, you'll end up on the code programming screen. I'm going to click on Setup Scene to get to our scene editor. Your scene is visible in the camera view in the top left of the code editor. Flip from Code Editor to Scene Editor by clicking the Setup Scene button. The scene editor is composed of the camera view, or the view of the scene you're working on, the Properties panel that allows you to edit your scene, and the gallery, which allows you to access 3D models and other assets to use in your scene. So let's take a look at an Alice 3D object together. These might include characters and vehicles such as people, animals, or vehicles to fill out your scene, and props and construction pieces such as trees, furniture, and castle walls so you can build structures or landscape environments. Every Alice object has its own orientation that is from the point of view of the object. The white axis points forward, the red arrow points to the right, the green arrow points upward, and blue arrow points backwards. Objects can move in 6 directions: up, down, left, right, forward, backward. Objects can turn in 4 directions: left, right, forward, backward. Objects can roll in 2 directions, left, right. Every object also has a pivot point around which it turns and rotates. The pivot point of an object is different for all objects. For most objects, the pivot point is at the center of where the object intersects with the ground. In this case, with the Queen of Hearts, the pivot point is at the feet to give you a more natural control over the object. Some of the more advanced objects may have internal joints or skeletons for more detailed movements. A joint connects the subparts of the body to the rest of the body. Joints have a different orientation than the whole object. This orientation determines how turn and roll will control them. This will allow you to have more fine control over the joints and details of an object, such as making arm or leg joints move as an object walks across the scene. Let's look at the gallery. The gallery contains the 3D models for adding objects to a scene. Each gallery tab displays a different organizational scheme for finding classes in the gallery. In Alice, a class defines a plan for constructing a new object in an Alice scene based around how it looks, and an action that an object of that class can perform, what an object can do. We can sort the gallery by class hierarchy. The skeleton and joints define how objects can be animated and impact the hierarchy at the top, such as this swimmer class shown here. Notice how the thumbnail of each object indicates the joint placement of that object. This lets you know how you'll be able to manipulate or animate that object. Subclasses have shared attributes. At the bottom of the hierarchy, the object's visual appearance is the main variation. Now let's look at how to add objects to your scene. Drag and drop or double-click objects to add them to the scene editor. Bounding boxes show where the object will be positioned when dragged into the scene editor. You'll also see options such as different variations of that object to choose from, and also the option to name the object. Double-clicked objects will be added at the very center of the world, coordinates 0, 0, 0. Alice will provide a default name for objects based on the class name selected, but you can enter a different name when adding objects. You will need to adhere to the following rules. Names must be one continuous word with no spaces. For names with multiple words, try typing in camel case, eliminating spaces and punctuation and capitalizing letters instead as shown here. The first character must be a letter and not a number. No special characters are permitted, such as question mark, @ or exclamation point. On the left of the screen I can see the object tree. You can see the Queen of Hearts object is selected. The default ring handle can be seen below this object, indicating that I can move it. To the right we see our object's properties. This will show us details like the color and opacity of the object and what its position is. We can edit the object using these options as well. You can do this by typing in a position or size you would like for the object. Now let's look at some ways we can position an object. Using a mouse, we can move the object on the ground plane. By default, clicking on an object and dragging the mouse. In default settings, a highlighted green ring will also appear around the object that can be used to rotate the object. If you hold the Shift key down, you can then move the object up and down with the mouse. You can use the handle style buttons to change the mouse behavior. Rotation displays these blue circular handles for manipulating turn and roll relative to the object's orientation. Translation displays handles for moving the object along the major axis relative to the object, and Resize displays a handle for uniformly scaling the object to make it bigger or smaller. For more precise positioning of objects, you can use the Properties panel to adjust the absolute position of the objects in the world. Just select the desired object from the object tree or the object drop-down menu. Modify the X, Y, and Z coordinates for the object in our Properties panel on the right by simply typing in the coordinates you need. The Properties panel can be used for position but not orientation. For more precise positioning of objects, use the One-Shot menu. Select the object's name from the Object menu. In the Properties panel, select a Move command from the One-Shot submenu. This gives you handy options such as programming an object to move towards another object or face an object. You can also simply right-click on an object in the scene to access the menu. Now, let's look at manipulating an object's subparts. To access an object's joints, click on the arrow next to the object's name in the object list. We can now see a list of joints that might be labeled names like neck, head, or mouth. Joints act as the pivot points for the subparts of the objects, extending from the object to its extremities. Turning and rotating joints may also move other joints and subparts. For example, turning the left elbow joint will also move the wrist and finger joints, the forearm, and the hand subparts. We can also see advanced editing options such as using the One-Shot menu on a joint. Now let's talk about the Alice camera. The camera, similarly to how a movie is shot, is what allows us to view our scene and manipulate the angle that we view it from. Think of it as making camera moves like close-ups or far-away shots. There's only one camera that can be moved around the scene. Changes in the scene view are achieved by moving the camera, not by switching to different cameras. The basic camera controls on the bottom of the scene view allow you to reposition the camera view in the scene editor and work similarly to the options that allow you to move objects in the scene. The left control arrows move the camera up, down, left, and right. The up-down arrows in the middle controls move the camera forward and backward. The right and left arrows in the middle controls turn the camera left and right. The right control arrows turn the camera forward and backward. To reuse frequent camera angles, you may want to try camera markers. Again, this gives us options similar to making a movie. Think of these as like marking your scene for where you want to put the camera, like putting tape on the ground to remember a camera position as you might do on a film set. A camera marker is an invisible object that allows you to mark a location and orientation in the world so that you can quickly move the camera to a saved place. It is highly recommended to create a camera marker when you start a new scene so that you can return to the starting place in case you accidentally move the camera. To make a camera marker, add a camera marker in the Properties menu. Use the left button to move the camera to the selected marker and use the right button to move the selected marker to the current camera position. In addition to the active scene camera, there are 4 alternate scene editor views. These are not camera locations or camera markers, so they cannot be referenced in your code to move the camera or viewpoint. They are very useful when building a scene to help align and orientate objects to each other. We can choose Layout Scene View, Top View, Side View, or Front View. If I lose track of where my camera is in the scene, I can click on my camera marker to bring me back. Now let's talk about a few tips and tricks in Alice. Remember to save your project world often, every 10 to 20 minutes. Alice will make its own save files, but only after you have done an initial save of your project yourself, so it's a good idea to save early and save often. It is important to use a progressive naming convention, such as adding a character to each new version, for incremental backups. Later versions of Alice 3 will also have an autosave function that will save incremental backups in case of an issue. You can always use undo and redo to test things. In addition to the interface buttons, you can use Command-Z to undo and Command-Y to redo. After using Rotate, Translate, or Resize, be sure to put the button back to default. Beginner Alice users often forget to return to the default handle style when they go to work on another object. There are a few hotkeys you can utilize as well. When using the mouse to manipulate objects in the scene editor, you can hold down Shift and drag the mouse to move the object vertically up and down. Hold down Control in Windows or Option in Mac and drag the mouse to turn the object. Shapes can be used to create generic objects. Billboards can have image textures added to them, and they can be used for backgrounds or directions. 3D text can be manipulated through code for dynamic text. We'll go into the advanced techniques more in future lessons. So thanks for watching. Remember, this lesson and other documents can be found on the Alice webpage. You can download the PowerPoint featuring all of the slides you've just seen, as well as project files if you need them, and the comprehensive facilitation guide. To try out what you have just learned, you can access other exercises and projects at the bottom of the lesson page. The tutorial lessons will walk you through all the different techniques in Alice, while other exercises may challenge you to build worlds using different techniques. Thank you for watching.